Part 43. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 421. After some blending, no, bargaining, the Silver Dragon Ophelia, Star Diamond, Shining Light, and Gretel, Nordmark, finally reached a magical reciprocal agreement. Ophelia promised to teach Gretel this magic until he fully learned it and could successfully release it, successfully killing the liver fluke in the patient. Greet promised to reveal 2 models for detecting magic to Ophelia, and provide as many comparison images as possible to facilitate Ophelia's learning and mastering. Both parties have the right to improve magic and promise to exchange improved spell models. So, this magic is actually very simple. Ms. Silver Dragon was in a good mood after getting the promise she wanted, and explained with a smile. Have you ever learned the detection of rot sacks of the necromantic system? The spell I just used was modified with it. Greet gave her a blank look. Detect rot sack, a first-level necromancy spell, of course you have learned it, and you can definitely release it. And then, that's the end of it? How does this spell work? Mechanism. Which spell structure does what? How can the spell structure be changed? Or even, what is rot sack? It doesn't seem to be bacteria, fungi, or viruses. Oh, forget about viruses, which can only be seen with an electron microscope, and it doesn't seem to be some kind of parasite. Greet got one from Lynn. After dissection, sectioning, and staining microscopy, he found that it was not some kind of tumor, so he lost interest. Rot cysts are some kind of spherical cysts produced by the mother body of rot sacks, and caused by the necromantic magic corruption cyst to grow in the body of the subject. They are filled with liquid or semi-liquid necromantic matter. She used it with ease. Silent Phantom outlines the spell model. And detection of rot sacks is to carry out targeted exploration of this kind of rot sacks in the human body. After the exploration is completed, refer to certain configurations of rot sack domination and rot sack burst to achieve resonance with them. Kill them all. So the principle resonates. So what exactly resonates with what? Sound waves. Magnetic field? It can't be DNA, right? Gretel raised a hand and tried to ask a question. Ophelia said in one breath. You see, this is the area that is used for detection, and this is the area that is used for killing. To change the object of detection, you make changes here. Models outlined by silent phantoms move piece by piece, break apart, and change color. Gretel memorized it for a moment, took out a notebook, and seeing that the silver dragon was silent, he immediately brushed up and copied hard. I only had pity on a bunch of barbarian sailors, who couldn't understand but were bored, twisting and turning there. Sarala, take them out and let the eagle take them down the mountain. Ophelia saw it and immediately threw the work on her niece. The silver dragon girl was listening with great interest when she was suddenly assigned such a job and looked shocked. Auntie, you don't like me anymore. You actually drove me away. I want to listen too. I don't want it. I want to listen here. Cirella. The 2 silver dragons looked at each other at close range, refusing to give in to each other, and the air in the medical room trembled. Elder Gushan was about to say, no need to guide us, we will get out on our own, but Greet spoke first. Don't. According to my estimation, most of these people will have liver flukes. Leave me to practice. Oh, Ophelia's eyes flashed. She looked at Gretel, silver light shot out from her fingertips, she glanced around the dazed barbarian sailors, and nodded. You're right. What? With the sound of brushing, one by one of the barbarian sailors turned pale. Most of them have it? In other words, they will be like the elders, pale in pain, rolling all over the boat, and having difficulty breathing? Well, is it appropriate to ask Ms. Yinlong for treatment now? Or, beg this kind-hearted mage to have a higher success rate? The sailors looked at the elder Gushan. The elder looked at Ophelia and then at Gretel, unable to make up his mind for a moment. MS Silver Dragon has given the order without any doubt. That's it, you guys will stay here first. She turned to the 8 mountain eagles, leave one in the front hall. If I need anything, I'll ask you to help transport it. Follow your orders, Your Excellency. Glory Scale. The leading mountain eagle folded its wings and bowed. Then, 8 mountain eagles that were taller than a human head lined up in a single file, stretched out their fur legs, and jumped out of the medical room. Cyrilla? Auntie, you really don't love me anymore. You won't listen to what I say. Just listen to what Greet says. Regardless, Gretel finally got his patience. Of course, these people would not be able to use it for the time being. Gretel would never dare to try magic on humans without having mastered it on animals. He still goes step by step, step by step. First pick out a few liver flukes and put them in bottles and jars. Close your eyes, activate Detect Rot's Exchange, and follow the mysterious connection between adults and adults to sense the number and location of parasites. Cut a few pieces of meat, bury the liver flukes in them, and do it again. This time, we must accurately sense the quantity and location, and kill accurately without missing a single one. Kill, dissect, and explore, kill again, dissect and explore again. After confirming success 3 times in a row, Gretel dug out some dead sheep and deer from MS Silver Dragon's storage room, cut them open, buried the liver flukes in their livers and gallbladders, and started a new round of spell practice. Finally, I would like to ask the mountain eagles. Help catch a few live animals. Well, it doesn't need to be more than 10. They can be as big as a rabbit or a goat. I can practice my skills with them. By the way, it's best to catch some fish from streams and rivers. Okay, sir. No problem, sir. We'll definitely catch it today, sir. From dead animals to live animals, from forcing liver flukes into animals, to using a long needle to inject parasites into their livers and gallbladders, and then trying magical treatments. Finally, the parts of the freshwater fish that are rich in metacercaria are cut out, fed to rabbits and sheep, and then killed in a targeted manner across the body. Detect Rot's Exchange. This magic is used to kill parasites. It can at least destroy metacercaria with a diameter of 0.15 mm, which is good. Next, find a time to try and see if you can get rid of roundworm eggs, bacteria, etc. Greet did the experiments methodically. After all the above steps were completed, and the dissection confirmed that the treatment effect was satisfactory, he stood in the medical room and shouted, "I'm going to start treatment, who comes first?" Me. The savages swarmed out. Greet jumped back reflexively, away from the treatment table, and then he saw giant men more than 2 meters tall, already lined up in a single file in front of him, with their tails swung directly outside the medical room. The order is so good. Didn't knock my desk over. If this happens, how many times can my small body withstand? Greet was still frightened. Outside, Ophelia shouted angrily. Come back, everyone. I haven't finished reading yet. Please give me monthly votes, recommend votes, book reviews, and all kinds of things. Thanks to Ed for the 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 422. Chapter 422. The 17th Electrocardiogram Experiment. In the past few days that Gretel has been practicing with animals, Ophelia has also found a target for her training. A ready-made group of barbarians were lined up in front of her, and she could summon them and wave them away, using detection magic to take photos over and over again. Gretel. Why doesn't something look right here? Let me take a look, ma'am. His leg bone was broken before. It wasn't connected well and it's a little crooked. Gretel. What are these light and dark things? It's nothing, just constipated. Gretel. Barbarians can make do without humans. When Greet began to study detection of rot sacks and modifications, he gave MS Silver Dragon a complete set of frontal and lateral X-ray images of the human body that he had drawn before. Now, MS Silver Dragon is holding the detection magic, X-ray version, he provided, and is enjoying herself. Well, although there is some difference in physique between humans and barbarians, they are much better than dwarves. That's a difference in proportion, just kidding. Even though MS Ophelia is an out-and-out silver dragon under the appearance of an elf, when she took the thick album, her slender hands sank. Greet is so young that he can almost be considered a cub in the eyes of the immortals. How many patients did he treat and how much time did he spend to compile such a thick book? This is not just my job. Greet lowered his head slightly to avoid her surprise and exclamation. He drew the pictures one by one with his own hands, but every key point and every noteworthy point in the picture is the result of thousands of doctors summarizing it bit by bit on patients. Photograph, compare, summarize, and write into a book. Revise again and again, iterate again and again. Going further back, the world's top scientists, with infinite enthusiasm and curiosity, revealed the secrets of radioactivity to mankind. It was the sages who explored the functions and harms of X-rays at the expense of their lives and health. It was the people with lofty ideals who risked their lives, slept in the open air, and walked day and night during the war, to carry China's only 50 grams of radium south, and to preserve the precious fire for the nuclear industry. How can you throw it lightly? How can you live up to it? Therefore, as long as he has the conditions to treat a patient, he will draw an image diagram. I have been painting by midnight for many days and have accumulated it until now. Unknowingly, it is already a thick book. Okay, I've finished copying it, and I'll give it back to you. Ophelia threw the album back into his arms, watched him hurriedly stuff it into the space bag, and snapped his fingers. I've already understood your detection magic. It's nothing more than memorizing the images and practicing more. What about the other magic? I've already mastered it. Do you want to watch me try it? No, Gretel suddenly raised his head and his voice suddenly became louder. Don't practice on people. If you want to practice on animals first. Really, Ophelia joked with him with a smile. Stretch out an arm, lift up your sleeve, and reach out to him. Try it. Can you tell it using the ultrasonic magic you mentioned? Greet threw the glycerin to her with a dark face. Just look at it. Although B ultrasound is generally used to see organs, blood vessels, bones and joints are not impossible to observe, however, don't ask me to apply oil for you. Do it yourself. Ophelia unscrewed the cap of the glycerin bottle in a good mood, poured it into her arm boldly, and drank half of the bottle on the spot. After wiping it on twice, Gretel seemed to see a sparkling silver light under the oily light. Wait, dragon scales? What is the principle behind your transformation technique? Why do dragon scales still appear under the body of an elf? He cursed and put his fingers up. The magic is activated, the ultrasonic waves are emitted, and the B ultrasound observation begins. Wait a minute, madam, can you take the dragon scales back? I feel like I'm not observing the human body, but doing metal flaw detection, I just see the gaps in the scales. Fortunately, the ultrasonic frequency of metal flaw detection is generally 0.520 MHz, which is similar to the frequency used by B ultrasound. Otherwise, if he sends the ultrasonic wave down, not to mention scales, he probably won't be able to see anything. Can't you see it anymore? Yeah, I can't see it. It's blocked by a silver plate outside. Madam, you can practice with animals first. Pay attention to controlling the frequency and not harming the animals. Hey, wait a minute. The silver dragon girl called out from the side. Sarah and Gretel have traveled together for so long, and have long since learned X-ray magic, of course, Whether they can use it well and interpret the images is another matter. However, when her aunt was holding the album and chewing on it, she learned B ultrasound magic as soon as she got started. At this moment, the silver dragon girl was holding a shaved live rabbit and was looking at it over and over. Seeing Gretel turning around to leave, she hooked her fingertips, and a wisp of long wind gently swept out and entangled Gretel's feet. "You're here. Is what I saw correct?" Greet wanted to say, but you copied the image. He paused for a moment before he spoke, then turned to Ophelia. "Madam, could you please study how to display the pictures in the meditation field of view to the outside world and print them on paper? This way, it will also be convenient for me to explain to everyone what the pictures I see represent." Ms. Yinlong plunged into research. After Gretel cured the barbarian, he turned around and fell into another research. So, how to connect the current drawn from the heart to the cloud screen. In front of him was a rabbit with its chest and belly shaved and its head turned upward. Take a thin silver needle in one hand, weigh it, and stick it between the left edge of the sternum and the right edge of the fourth rib. Fortunately, rabbits, like humans, have 12 pairs of ribs, so he doesn't have to recalculate the lead positions. Summoning the cloud screen, descends, falls above the silver needle, 3 mm, 2 mm, 1 mm. The cloud screen shook for a while. Then, the tip of the silver needle on the left pierced the cloud screen, and the moment it didn't touch the right side, it quietly collapsed. Gretel was expressionless. Pull out the silver needle and spread out the notebook. The oak stick in the chest pocket stretched out a root, rolled up the endless ink pen and landed on the notebook, and wrote. The 17th electrocardiogram experiment failed. Reason for failure: the silver needles did not enter the cloud screen at the same time, and the elements were disrupted and disintegrated. Improvement method: 1. Pay attention to the timing of the cloud screen landing and insert the silver needles at the same time. 2. Confinement the experimental subjects to prevent the silver needles from moving. 3. Connect wires to the top of the silver needles and fix them on a certain plane to maintain a consistent height. Well, the third method seems more reliable. After all, the electrocardiogram requires 12 leads. The problem is that after the weak myocardial electricity passes through the wire, it has been so attenuated that it cannot be seen. Should we develop superconductivity? By the way, what kind of metal should superconducting wires be made of, and how low should the temperature be? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Lan 2020. Chapter 423. Gretel's knowledge of electrocardiograms in her previous life, well, it can't be said that she didn't understand them. At least, as a deputy director of the emergency department, he can use an electrocardiograph and identify some of the more dangerous patterns. If he cannot distinguish them, he will know to call the cardiology department for consultation. Then, he also explained the principles of cardiac myoelectricity very clearly. But, you let him rub his hands on the electrocardiograph. Just kill him. This really can't be done. Electrode tubes, amplifiers, filters. By the way, we still need to write programs. Gretel touched the melon seeds on his head. Although his hair was still thick after time travel, it was not so bad. So what to do? The display problem has been solved. How to solve the export problem? The temperature required for electrode sheets, coupling agent, seems to be close to absolute zero. I don't know if Yinlong can rub it by hand. Gretel, what are you thinking about? Cyrilla suddenly jumped over and poked him. I turned on detect thoughts and I can't read it. What is an electric pole? What is a superconductor? What did you say, Greet turned his head suddenly. His eyes were shining brightly as he stared at Cyrilla. The silver dragon girl subconsciously took a step back. Electricity, electrodes. And superconductivity, what is that? Why do you want us to do it? Not that sentence. The previous sentence, Gretel waved his hand eagerly. The silver dragon girl took another step back, murmuring guiltily. Detecting thoughts, I just want to see what kind of problems you encounter. Well, if you don't like it, I won't let you go. Detecting thoughts? By the way, detecting thoughts, Greet jumped up, trembling with excitement. He walked from the desk to the left wall, then from the left wall to the right wall, muttering to himself as he walked. Detect thoughts, collect information, interpret. What is the information collected? Waves? Brain waves. Could it be brain waves? Bernard. Bernard. Barbarian followers scurried out. Gretel gasped for breath and grabbed him. Your helmet. Lend me your helmet. Quick. Bernard didn't know why, but he still ran back with a clanking sound, and then rushed back with his helmet in his arms like a whirlwind. This helmet was made for Bernard by a dwarf master craftsman. It was made of solid materials and had an extra pair of metal horns on both sides. As soon as Gretel grabbed it, his arms immediately sank down. Good weight. Greet muttered and raised the horned helmet, holding the horns on both sides with both hands, and slapped it on his forehead. The helmet is big, the head is small, and the vision suddenly becomes dark. He had no time to adjust and gropingly turned to Cyrilla. Put another detect thought. Quick. Can you read it? It's not bad, it's such a big hole. What about this? Greet pulled up his visor. After a moment of silence, the silver dragon girl's voice came out with a slight hum and distortion. Not very good, but metal can block spells. What does this mean? It's really not convincing enough. Greet's mind sank into the space bag, and he rummaged through it, but couldn't find what he wanted. After thinking for a moment, he raised his horned helmet and revealed half of his face from underneath. Cyrilla. Can you shape the metal, pull the silver ingots into thin silver threads and weave them into a uniform net to cover me inside? You take off that cover first before you speak. The silver dragon girl's magic shaping ability is still a little bit behind. Although Gretel is quite skeptical, she is actually impatient. Finally, after Grey promised to show her a device that could block electric current, Cyrilla ran decisively and dragged her aunt over. Then, according to Gretel's request, Ophelia personally took action and shaped a large steel ingot provided by Gretel into a Faraday cage with a mesh of only 1 square centimeter and interlocking rings. Greet squatted in personally. As soon as the cage was closed, Cyrilla couldn't wait and shot a small bolt of lightning out. The electric sparks flashed on the wire and suddenly went out, but Greet stood firmly inside, looking at her with a smile, unscathed. Huh? Why is this? The eyes of the two silver dragons lit up. Gretel urged. I'll tell you later. Hurry up, let's detect thoughts again. I know. Think of whatever you want. The two silver dragons threw detect thoughts together. Soon, they looked at each other in surprise. It's indeed harder than before. It shouldn't be, the steel wire is so thin, much thinner than the thickness of the helmet. There are a lot of holes in it. How about weaving the wire mesh a little thinner? Ophelia simply appears in dragon form. She lay down in the middle of the hall of the medical area, closed her eyes, and her whole body shone with silver light. Activating his mental power, the steel wire mesh around Gretel collapsed on its own and flew into the air. The steel wire was pulled by invisible hands. 1 meter became 2 meters, 2 meters became 4 meters, and then, it was connected into a denser grid. Greet squatted into the cage automatically and consciously. The second round of detection of thoughts was thrown, and sure enough, the protective effect was improved again. Why is that? Two eyes the size of silver plates stared at Greet, and he exhaled from his nostrils, and puffs of white mist sprayed directly onto Greet. Except for Bernard, the other barbarians had already fled back to their rooms. Only Gretel tried his best to explain to the silver dragons across the cage. Actually, the brain, like the heart, also produces electric currents and brain waves that can be observed. I personally suspect that the magic of detecting thoughts is the reception and interpretation of brain waves, and the method, no, the steel mesh can shield the current, so it will affect the reading of brain waves by detection of thoughts. Detect thoughts is a second-level magic. The scope of the spell is a cone-shaped area, and the casting process is divided into 3 stages. In the first stage, scan the casting range to see if there are any thinking creatures, possessing intelligence and consciousness. In the second stage, scan the number of thinkers and their intelligence value. Greet strongly suspects that it is the intensity of brainwave activity. The third round is to detect all surface thoughts in the area. It can be seen that this magic is composed of at least 3 different configurations, and there may be some structures that relate them to each other. However, it is beyond Gretel's ability to decide which piece is responsible for which. He turned his expectant eyes to MS Silver Dragon. Please help. Please disassemble it. Please dismantle the spell structure one by one to see which part is responsible for scanning the surroundings, which one is receiving, and which one is reading. Without saying a word, Ophelia began to dismantle it. In the air, phantoms danced and flickered, and fine fluctuations of mana kept appearing and disappearing. For an adult silver dragon, manipulating a few low-level magics is almost like eating and drinking, and there is almost no feeling of mana consumption. Soon, MS Silver Dragon's fingertips sparkled with lightning. You can indeed receive electricity. Gretel, come out and let's try again. After struggling for a long time, I finally decided to use magic to get around. Electrodes, wires, resistors, amplification, filtering, programming, it is really too difficult. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Kongtong and @Gonshu for the 100 book coins rewarded with the trumpet. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 424. The next work is overwhelming. The tips of Ophelia's claws flew, the magic power intertwined, and soon the part of the detecting thoughts that received the body surface current was connected to the cloud screen. Fortunately, the structure that was dismantled was only a small part of detecting thoughts. Even with the addition of a cloud screen, the entire spellcasting intensity is only at the level of first-level magic. The 2 spell configurations are connected together, and then they receive, amplify, and transmit in one go. Gretel. Come on. Let me measure it. MS Silver Dragon ordered. Sarala's eyes sparkled next to her, eager to give it a try. He raised his palm, his fingertips were shining, and he saw that the dragon claw was about to pop out. Greet shuddered subconsciously. When he measured the myocardial current of rabbits and dogs, he shaved the hair on his chest and inserted a silver needle into it. When it was his turn, there was no hair on his chest that needed to be shaved, and with detection of thoughts there was no need to insert silver needles, but... Don't take off my clothes. Gretel raised his hands as if surrendering and stretched them out far away. Left wrist, right wrist. Just measure both wrists. Well. He automatically bent down, pulled up his trouser leg, and pulled his left sock down to his ankle. And the left ankle. It's just a test, the limb leads are enough. As for the chest leads, the specific positioning issues, as well as how to operate 12 leads at the same time and display 6 electrocardiograms, will be considered after he learns this magic. Soon, long and short lines appeared on the cloud screen. Greet pointed at MS Silver Dragon, constantly changing the display details, and making the electrocardiogram into a shape he was familiar with. Divide the screen into well-proportioned small squares by vertical and horizontal lines. The interval between every two vertical lines represents 0.04 seconds, and the interval between every two horizontal lines. If it's broken, how do you get the voltmeter out? What height corresponds to 0.1 MV? How to determine this voltage? Forget it, let's probably adjust it together to a height I'm familiar with. Gretel hesitated and decided to go hard. He looked very confident, pointing fingers and directing Ms. Silver Dragon to adjust the magic details. The distance between every two horizontal lines represents a unit of ECG intensity. Lower the peak, lower it, lower, then raise it a bit lower, then lower it, and that's it. Don't use vertical bars to display ECG intensity. Connect the points at the tips of the vertical bars and draw a line. It must be admitted that Ophelia's magic control is strong enough, and her character is patient and meticulous enough. Greed had a request and an idea. She actually took the trouble to adjust it again and again. Sarala was walking around, but she didn't have enough magic power or control, so she couldn't keep up with her aunt. The cloud screen gathers and falls apart, and gathers again. I don't know how many times I struggled, but finally, tick, tick, tick. Thump, thump. A familiar and beautiful eyelid electrocardiogram appeared on the cloud screen in front of Gretel, fluctuating endlessly, just like Gretel's intense heartbeat. Lift up, fold down, pull horizontally. High peaks and low valleys, full of rhythm. Looking at the familiar P waves on the clouds, Gretel took a deep breath and couldn't help but close his eyes. Made. Finally made it. Seniors Waller, Senior Eindhoven, all the medical scientists at home and abroad who have worked hard for electrocardiograms, teacher who taught them electrocardiogram classes, Director Lee of the Department of Cardiology. I made it. From now on, there is another powerful tool in this world that can diagnose the patient's condition and save the patient's life. Little guy, why are you dazed? Suddenly, Gretel was slapped on the forehead, causing Gretel to fall forward. He came to his senses and quickly apologized to Ophelia. Ma'am, that's it, what I need now is that this magic can support the measurement of 9 positions at the same time and display 12 graphics at the same time. Ophelia was stunned. Sarala was stunned. The huge dragon head approached him again. Looking up and down, the air exhaled from the nostrils almost blew greed away. Then, suck hard. Gretel's clothes were bulging to the limit, and he involuntarily took a step forward, his hands almost resting on the silver dragon's nostrils. The taste is right. It's still that little greed. I mean, little guy, you are only at level 5. Can you operate 12 lines at the same time? Do you have the mental strength to withstand it? This, you have to bear it even if you can't stand it. Gretel smiled bitterly. Clinically, each of the 12 leads is meaningful, and each line and each waveform change represents a certain possibility. Of course I usually only read 3 or 4 at a time, and even when I get anxious, I only read 1 or 2. For example, sudden death during exercise often occurs in an instant from strenuous exercise to collapse. The window period for rescue is often only a few minutes. At this time, basically only the second lead is looked at, and all other leads are ignored. However, in the face of some complex and atypical situations, if you read 3 leads and then look at the other 3, you may often miss some changes. It is not necessary to drop 9 electrode pads at the same time and display 12 leads at the same time. There must be some margin in this spell configuration. Ophelia lowered her head and looked at him steadily. A pair of blue eyes as big as plates reflected the figure of the little mage looking up at each other, firm, tough, and unyielding. Stubborn little guy, Ms. Silver Dragon chuckled. She suddenly activated her transformation spell and turned into a silver dragon again. With a flick of his fingertip, the endless ink pen broke away from the tree root and flew directly up, leaving an afterimage on the paper. If you want to display the 12 leads, you need to change it here. You also need to change it here, 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 here. Brush, blot, 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 blot. Gretel quickly patted the space bag and poured out a thick piece of white paper. There was no movement from MS Silver Dragon at all, and the writing papers flew up one by one and fell to the pen. Straight lines, arcs, dots, circles, ellipses, triangles, squares, rhomboses, numbers, symbols, formulas. The speed is dizzying. Pieces of white paper filled with writing and drawings flew up one after another, and soon they were all covered with walls. But MS Silver Dragon was still not satisfied. She still looked at the wall, commanded the quill pen to write a few lines, looked at the wall again, and asked the quill pen to draw 2 strokes. Looking at the endless ink pen moving rapidly on the paper, Greed had only one thought in his mind. You are now a mature quill, and you have to learn to derive magic formulas by yourself. And, fortunately, when the Emerging Magician Award was given out, the prize was made into a pen with an endless ink function. If you replace it with an ordinary pencil, pen, or even a ballpoint pen, you really can't stand MS Yinlong writing like this. It will be recommended the day after tomorrow. Recommended for more updates. Saving manuscripts desperately. Please subscribe, ask for a monthly ticket, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Please give me some encouragement. You must come and see it on the 22nd. The recommendation effect that day has a great influence on what the editor recommends later. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 425. Chapter 425 I learned electrocardiography, but my mental strength. Okay, this is what you want. After the walls, ceiling, and floor space of Greet's residence were all covered with calculation paper, and a thick pile was piled up on the desk, MS Silver Dragon finally came to a satisfactory conclusion. She stretched out her hand and swept it across the table. An invisible magical power rolled up several pieces of white paper and glued their edges together into a large flat sheet. The new configuration is ready for you. Then, the one circled in red is the detection, and the one circled in blue is the display waveform. You can add as many as you can, don't overdraw your mental power. After speaking, he hooked his fingers and walked away. The Faraday cage flew up on its own, followed MS Silver Dragon, swayed, and flew out the door. It seems that the Silver Dragon has taken a fancy to it and plans to take it back to play video games several times. The endless ink pen fell onto the calculation paper with a splat, motionless, and the diamonds set near the tip of the pen were a little transparent. Just a little bit, he was about to scream out loud, there really isn't a drop left. Hey, it's a good thing that the boss didn't put the quill in his pocket. Greed quickly took out a bottle of ink, inserted the quill into it, and let it charge itself, suck the ink. Then, he picked up the architectural drawings freshly drawn by the boss and filled with annotations, jumped on them, and studied, understood, and memorized them desperately. You must memorize it until you are familiar with it, and then you can use your mental power to construct graphics in the world of meditation without making any mistakes. Then, he stirs up his mental structure and draws in the magical power from the outside world to create what he wants. So hard. 9 electrodes, 9 detection points, and 12 leads. For limb leads, you have to switch back and forth between 3 normal leads and 3 pressure leads. Even if you only look at 3 leads at the same time, controlling the detection, reception, and display at the same time is about the same as supporting a dozen mage hands at the same time, or even powerful mage hands. Clamping of clamping, pulling of pulling, lifting of lifting, blunt separation of blunt separation. Although he already had operating experience before, most of the mage's hands were just stationary, and only 2 or 3 hands were actually moving. Gretel rubbed his forehead uncomfortably. Hey, No matter what, let's set up the main structure first, and then treat the 9 electrodes as 9 octopus legs, extending out one by one. He closed the door and quietly entered a meditative state. After advancing to the 5th level priest, Gretel's spiritual power has reached a new level. Both the total amount and the degree of solidification are much stronger than before. It's a pity that I'm stuck on advancing to level 5 mage. I don't know why, and I can't learn many magics. Gretel was not in a hurry. What unique magic does the 5th level mage have that the natural priest does not have, and he is eager to use it? Fireball. No, he really doesn't lack lethality. In fact, he hasn't fought anyone for a long time. Flying. It does look very tempting, but compared with the ECG is more important. Phantom Pony. The Phantom Pony is indeed much stronger than the first level summoned mount. However, the mage level needs to be upgraded to level 8 before it can run on sand, mud, and swamps. It can only walk on water after reaching level 10. At level 12, it can fly through the air. At level 14, the Phantom Pony can fly. If you expect that, you might as well contract a flying creature or buy a flying equipment. Gretel thought about it, and it seemed that only the escape cabin of the plasticity system was better. With this magic, it was like having a portable, mobile operating room. But for this forced breakthrough, it seems that it is not necessary. The magic of electrocardiogram is more fragrant. Gretel patiently adjusted his condition. In the core of meditation, the bones, muscles, blood vessels, and the nervous system that have been completed in the 4th stage of the little person condensed by mental power are connected into one body and interact silently. After the advancement, the carving of the internal organs has also begun. After his mental power passed through the core of meditation and cleared the conch-shaped shell, Greed put his energy into the spell model. Well, this structure is to shape the cloud screen, this structure is to divide the cloud screen into strips, this structure is to input signals and display lines. This structure is for detecting radio waves, and this structure is for inputting detection signals. Oops. Wrong drawing. Again. Outlining spell models in the world of meditation is definitely not an easy task. The structure must be accurate, and the error rate cannot be too high, otherwise the magic effect will be poor at best, or your own spiritual sea will be exploded at worst. You need to pay a certain amount of solidified mental power to build this model, otherwise you will have to start over every time you turn over the spell book when casting a spell. The construction process must be completed in one go, without interruptions. For example, if you outline a section and forget the rest, exit the meditation and take a look at the spell book. I'm sorry, please start from the beginning again. Of course Gretel wouldn't be unable to memorize it. However, for a main structure, just drawing out a well-proportioned square grid, with each row corresponding to an input signal, is already very painful. The information from 9 detection points has to be processed into 12 types of signals, which makes people want to die. He gritted his teeth, mobilized his mental power, and desperately built the entire model. Then, holding a shaved rabbit, he used his mental power to move the spell model to complete the cloud screen. Taking the cloud screen as the base point, one by one, the tentacles of exploration are extended outward. In order to reduce Greed's consumption, MS Silver Dragon removed most of the functions of detecting thoughts when designing the spell model, and only retained the 2 modules of detection and transmission. Even the magic's landing point, after communicating with Gretel, was changed to using mental power to pull it on the spot. Anyway, when doing an electrocardiogram, the doctor holds the electrodes and sticks them on the patient one by one. Cough. Greed controlled his mental power to be calm, pulling the detectors one by one, and put them on the rabbit. Left front paw. Right front paw. Left hind paw. Although a circle of probes can be placed inside the body around the heart, the first test should start from the standard site. After placing the 3 detector heads, Hook up the cloud screen, turn on the power, 1, 2, 3, electrocardiogram, start. The cloud screen lit up with messy lines. Zilla zilla, zilla zilla, like a radar that has been seriously interfered with, or like a snowflake on the TV. Gretel, on the other hand, could not help but scream, holding his head and bending down. When he raised his head again, the thin screen of clouds and mist dissipated silently. Gretel, is it still too much? Is my mental strength still not strong enough? Well, I must be too tired today. It must be. Greet recharged his energy, had a good sleep, and started all over again the next day. This time the effect is indeed much better. On the cloud screen, there is 1 electrocardiogram, 2 electrocardiograms, 3 electrocardiograms. Tomorrow, or tonight at 12 o'clock, the recommendation will be posted. Updates will start at 12:05 tonight. Saving manuscripts desperately. Please subscribe, ask for a monthly ticket, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Please give me some encouragement. If it doesn't work, I must read it tomorrow. The recommendation effect that day has a great influence on what the editor recommends later. Thanks to Ed for the 500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 426. 3 curves appear steadily. Greet opened his eyes and carefully observed the electrocardiogram waveform. Within half a minute, his vision went dark and he swayed on the spot. When he opened his eyes again, he happened to see the thin clouds in front of him disintegrating on the spot, leaving only the last wisp of water mist curling away. Why did it fail again? Greet wailed. What's the use of half a minute? He needs more than just a diagnosis. It's not just about observing 4 or 5 heartbeats per lead, it's over with just one look. ECG monitoring during major surgeries can last for several hours. Moreover, there must be room for operations or to guide healing magic. In this case, it is necessary to be able to hang up for at least half an hour, and at the same time, several mage hands must be used to work, and 2 rounds of healing spells must be thrown from time to time. This magic is useful. How can this situation be improved now? Is it because you don't have enough mental strength? Do you have to wait for the next advancement? Or should he work harder, meditate harder, and increase his mental strength? You can definitely do it if you work harder. Well, his mage level has not reached level 5 yet. It must be the brain in his spiritual core that is not perfectly constructed, and his instinct is suppressing himself from upgrading. Gretel. You're too nervous. With a bang, the door was pushed open, and Sarala confidently stuck her head in to take a look. The girl's crystal face is either angry or happy, half concerned, half complaining. I have been here with my aunt for so many days, and every day is research, treatment, meditation, research, treatment, meditation. I don't even find a chance to go out and play. If you are not relaxed, it is difficult to advance. Come on, come with me to take a dip. Spa. Hot springs. Gretel had just walked towards the silver dragon girl, and when he heard this, he hung one foot in the air and froze on the spot. Hot springs. Sarah, are you sure you want me to take a hot spring bath with you? No, wait, are we soaking in the same pool? Do you have a swimsuit? Whether you have it or not, I'm pretty sure, at least I don't have it. No, you have to give me time to prepare, otherwise I will get into trouble. Don't leave in a hurry. Gretel fell backwards and struggled hard in the girl's hands. Although the effect of the struggle was better than nothing, at least it could express an attitude and buy him some time to say a few words. Give me some time. I need to prepare clothes for the water. What are you ready for? Cyrilla continued to pull him out. It's just clothes, you can't wear your carry-on clothes? Can you have no clothes in your space bag? How silly to delay going out for this reason. It's rare to go out for fun, how can you not be prepared? Greet continued to struggle. You have brought food. You have brought drinks. I'll catch it. How can you only eat barbecue when you are in a hot spring? Gretel held onto the door frame with all his strength. Soak in the hot spring, drink ice juice, eat fruits and delicious desserts. This is the correct way to soak in the hot spring. You can catch all the food along the way. What's the use of animals? Give me some more time to prepare the seasoning. This is what you said. The strength in her arms relaxed, and the silver dragon girl looked back at him happily, and bent her fingers one by one. Fruit. Juice. Dessert. Barbecue. You are responsible for everything. I'm responsible, Greet went up and down, nodding at the speed of light. That's it? How much fruit and juice are needed to feed a silver dragon? How many more desserts are there? For barbecue, how many cows should be roasted? Will I burn my arm off? By the way, can you bring Bernard over to help? Don't take Bernard. I mean, is there any way to resist detection of thoughts, or should he make a silver hood? I didn't activate detect thoughts. The silver dragon girl stopped and turned around. An angry voice came from the door of the medical area. The little things you think about are all reflected on your face. Fortunately, the barbarian Elder Gushan extended a helping hand in time. Although Elder Gushan couldn't help him barbecue, he was still very efficient in picking fruits, squeezing juice, and preparing desserts. He gave an order, and the tribesmen temporarily staying in the medical area cleaned themselves up and joined the work collectively. Not only that, he also solved Gretel's problem. Your Excellency, do you need some clothes to wear when going into the water? The elder respectfully held out a stack of dark things with countless scales arranged on them. This is the clothing we made from fish skin. Wear it when you go into the water to hunt whales. It is waterproof, cold resistant, and does not stick to water. It is very useful. Your Excellency, would you like to try it? Greet thanked the elder and went back to the room. He was still doubtful and unfolded his fish skin clothes. No, the barbarian is half as tall as him, and his waist is twice as wide. How many of them can this fish skin coat hold? Fortunately, the fish skin clothing provided by the barbarian elders was elastic enough, that is to say, there was no need to modify or reduce the size of the clothes, and Gretel's clothes just fit him perfectly. He threw dozens of cleaning techniques on it and scrubbed it with soap, finally washing the dark fish skin clothes until they were silvery white. Well, visually clean, no dirt, no odor, true to size, snugly wrapped from the waist to just above the ankles, it's a perfect pair of swimming trunks, bingo. Fruit gets square root. Juice gets square root. Ice cubes, no need for ice cubes, freezing ray is very useful, ice juice gets square root. Various pastries with enough sugar. Of course, the sugar comes from Gretel's space bag gets square root. Barbecue powder mixed with various seasonings gets square root. Get the grill, get the barbecue fork, get the charcoal for barbecue square root. Yukata get, towel get, soap get, slippers get square root. Greet emptied the space bag and packed it with enough food and various bathing supplies for a silver dragon to make a tooth sacrifice. Then, he specially found the trekking poles used when going up the mountain, and restored the oak poles to the shape of eyebrow sticks, one on the left and one on the right, full of confidence. It's time to go. I climbed up to the dragon's nest despite the dragon's power, but going down the mountain to the hot springs was no big deal. Then, on the platform at the entrance of the dragon's lair, a strong wind almost blew Gretel off the cliff. Behind him, Cyrilla returned to her dragon form, flapped her wings, stretched out her claws slightly on the way up, and grabbed him into the air. The strong wind that hit his face immediately made Gretel unable to breathe. Cirella, where are we going? For a long time, Greet struggled to throw himself a mage armor, regained his breath and shouted. There are many mountains at the foot of the mountain, winding like a dragon, and the dragon's nest is the highest one among the peaks. However, there is no magma inside this dragon's nest, it is not a volcano, and there shouldn't be a hot spring on the top. Why are you taking me flying up there, Sarara? Show you my aunt's home, Sarala shouted back. This flat top is so beautiful. Greet, when you come back, I will take you to lie on it and watch the stars. She flew higher and higher, and sure enough, a huge rectangular rock appeared in Gretel's field of vision, large enough to accommodate dozens of dragons rolling around. Sarala was reluctant to leave and circled 3 times in a row on the dragon's nest before fluttering her wings and flying north. While flying, he was still whispering to Gretel. When I look for a dragon's nest in the future, I will look for something like this. A whole rock of this size. A flat stone top. It's convenient to bask in the sun and look at the stars. It's close to the sea on one side and the forest on the other. I can find something to eat. Gretel deeply felt that he was a poor man. My high-level mage tower is not enough to sharpen Miss Long's claws, right? Don't be afraid, Miss Long is now a young dragon, and she has just entered youth. By the time she reaches adulthood, my net worth should be as much as that of an adult dragon, right? Tomorrow, or tonight at 12 o'clock, the recommendation will be posted. Updates will start at 12:05 tonight. 3 updates from 5 to 1500 hours, and then normal updates at 12 o'clock noon and 8 p.m. tomorrow. If I can make it in time, I may add one more update. Saving manuscripts desperately. Please subscribe, ask for a monthly ticket, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, please give me some encouragement. If it doesn't work, I must read it tomorrow. Tomorrow's recommendation effect will have a great influence on what the editor will recommend later. Thanks to @MagicalGirlPikaMeow for the 100 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 427. The silver dragon flies and flies. Gretel hung on and swung. Mage armor, shield, cold and heat resistance, bubble, sneeze. Cirilla, how far are we still? It's not far away. The hot spring is very close. Gretel looked at the mountains and the pearl-like snow-melt lakes at his feet, never realizing how close the hot springs were to them. In other words, when he looked far into the distance, none of the mountains he could see looked like the crater of a volcano. Miss, we have already flown, sneeze. It's been almost an hour, right? Does this mean we have to fly for another hour? Forget it, let's just prepare to experience the flying technique in advance. The wind is a bit strong in front of you, so add another protective remote range, and then add a feather falling technique. Greet is still looking forward to the hot springs. Steaming geothermal hot springs. Soak in the spring water, face nature, and look up at the forest, snow-capped mountains, and starry sky. What a beautiful sight it is. While soaking, maybe there will be deer coming to the spring to drink water, or monkeys coming down to soak together. Well, if that's the case, forget it. Putting their hope in Miss Silver Dragon's dragon power, the beasts will retreat and don't come to compete with them for the pool. In short, it is very pleasant to soak in the hot spring and enjoy the beautiful scenery. What about Halagu Hot Springs, Alp Snow Mountain Hot Springs, Sapporo Hot Springs? Sorry, I can only see it in my dreams. I really want to go visit the local area, but I have no time and no money. As for the hot springs he has tried personally. In my previous life, thanks to the huge flow of people, most of the hot springs you could bathe in were fake hot springs. That is to say, large boilers heated hot water and then put some medicine packets and seasonings for you. What? Real hot spring? A local classmate said mysteriously, they are all locked up, and we ordinary people can't get in. This time, what Cyrilla brought him here was always the real hot spring. I don't know how big the pool is and whether it is big enough for Miss Silver Dragon to flutter. The Silver Dragon broke through the wind and moved forward. Due to its racial characteristics, the Silver Dragon is more adaptable to and prefers cold climates. When moving daily, cold mist is generated under its wings. This time, Sarah flew very restrainedly, and every wisp of mist was sucked into her mouth, without contaminating Greet at all. She headed east and north, flying along the coastline. The mountains at your feet are undulating. Although you are in the far north, with warm currents from the ocean and water vapor blowing from the sea, the mountains at your feet are still covered with a layer of fluffy green. Occasionally, you can still see deer running in the fields, lowering their heads to eat the green grass on the ground. Greet lowered his head and looked down in the dragon's claws, feeling the breeze blowing against his face and feeling extremely relaxed. It is a completely different feeling than sitting in a passenger plane and looking at the earth. I don't know how many mountains I flew over. Suddenly, a silver light like a bright mirror appeared on the top of the mountain in the distance. There it is! Cyrilla shouted loudly into the wind. She accelerated suddenly and shot forward like a sharp arrow. The silver light was getting closer and closer, but it turned out to be a lake on the top of a high mountain, lying quietly in the circular mountain pass. The waves are as flat as a mirror, except for a small island protruding from the center of the lake, like a colored gemstone in the center of a jade plate. In the center of the island, white mist curls up. The waves are as flat as a mirror. Looking from above, the blue sky is reflected in the water, making the entire lake look blue. Cyrilla rushed over happily. Approaching the lake, he released his claws and threw a feather falling technique to Gretel. Then, he spread his wings, slid against the lake surface for a while, and plunged into the center of the lake. Gretel swayed downwards. While floating, I looked at a few hundred meters away, huge water splashes rising into the sky, as if a cannonball exploded in the water. Tiny water droplets were carried by the mountain wind and actually blew onto him, making his cheeks wet. Girl, your diving style is not good. For such a big splash, all your points will be deducted. Also, what you call hot springs is, this, big, lake. Greet floated to the shore of the lake fuming. Judging from Silver Dragon's standards, Miss Cyrilla was not inconsiderate. The position where he was placed was near a large flat stone on the shore, which extended diagonally into the lake. Gretel carefully walked to the water's edge, rolled up his sleeves and reached down to touch the lake water. Hey, it's hot. I feel like I can soak in it. He quickly walked around behind the rocks, put on his swimsuit and slippers, and walked into the water. The water in the lake is clear, and you can easily see the stone slope sloping downward. There are actually several grooves in the middle, which have been washed smooth by the water waves. The width and slope are just right for you to lie inside, with your head still above the water. Gretel didn't care where the groove came from, stretched his limbs, and lay down comfortably. Feeling the warm water waves soaking his whole body, he rested his head on the stone slope and let out a long sigh. Ah, so comfortable. I feel like I can have a good sleep. These days, I am either treating people or studying magic. I am really nervous. His upper and lower eyelids stuck together unconsciously. The whole body relaxes, and the whole person floats slightly, swaying with the water waves. After thinking for a while, he threw out an activated rope and tied himself to the shore, then let himself fall into sleep with peace of mind. Anyway, this lake is quite big, and it would take a long time for the silver dragon to swim around. Let me take a nap first. Phew. I don't know how long I had been sleeping, but the water waves suddenly started to violently turbulent, and a wave hit me directly on my face. Greet suddenly woke up and opened his eyes. A huge dragon head stretched out in front of him. Greet, wake up. Let's go to the island in the center of the lake. It's more fun over there. How do I get to? Gretel sat up in the groove and looked at the island in the middle of the lake. The water mist is vast, and the flat lake is like a mirror. Looking from the lakeside, I don't know how far it is to reach the island in the middle of the lake. It's not like he can't swim, but if he swims all the way halfway through the swim, it would probably be useless, right? Oh, I'll take you swimming. The faucet twisted its head and plunged diagonally into the water. Huge water waves stirred up again, and soon, the shining back of the silver dragon appeared not far from the slope, looming. Come on, get on my back. Get me. You won't fly over, will you? Gretel asked warily. His whole body is soaked now. If Cyrilla flies up and the cold wind blows, it will be like a severe cold. What am I doing flying? The water in this lake is so hot, it feels so comfortable to soak in. Hurry up. The dragon's tail flicked, causing countless water splashes. Gretel tightened the space bag on his waist, plunged into the water, and paddled hard. Although it was a young silver dragon, its body length was equivalent to half a standard pool. Gretel made 7 or 8 strokes in one breath, and finally got on the dragon's back and grasped the thorns in the center of its back. Hold on, Cyrilla twisted her slender neck and looked back at him. We're off. Yo-ho. The water is rolling and the waves are breaking. Greet held the thorns on the dragon's back with both hands, tried his best to stabilize his body, and stuck out his head. This journey is so exciting. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There will be another update in 5 minutes. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 428. The islands in the center of the lake are indeed more beautiful. The island is lush with trees and colorful with red, yellow, orange, and brown, as if a paint tray has been spilled, spreading the strongest colors of autumn on the island. In the center of the island, there is a clear spring water, steaming with steam and white mist curling up. Gretel was wrapped in a fur coat and followed Cyrilla, walking step by step through the woods to the spring. The rocks next to the spring are pure black in color, smooth and dense, and have a texture like glass. The stone is covered with a thin layer of water vapor, but it is not slippery when stepped on. If you look carefully, you can see that there are deep and shallow lines on it, one by one. Until Greet sat down in the spring, he was still holding his hands on the left and right, touching the stones beside the spring. For some reason, he always felt that the stone showed signs of fluidization and solidification, and the lines on it were a bit suspicious, not like they were naturally formed. You mean this? Cyrilla leaned opposite him, lying in the spring with her limbs stretched out, with only her head above the water. Thin and dense silver scales were woven into a close-fitting soft armor on her body, outlining the girl's slender and graceful figure. She casually patted the stone surface beneath her, and water splashed high, hitting her head and face. The silver dragon girl swung hard. I asked Colin to do this. Oh, Colin is my aunt's spouse, a golden dragon. I asked him to renovate this spring, and he burned the stones, and it became like this. Then I made it. If you have some patterns, you won't be slippery when you walk on them. It turns out that it was really burned. Moreover, the extremely high temperature dragon's breath burned the stone into this state. And, miss, how did you get these lines? Considering that you want the golden dragon to help with the renovation, you probably won't be able to switch between turning mud into stone and fossils into mud. So, these lines are wide at the top and thin at the bottom, with several lines and several lines. You didn't dig it with your claws, did you? Greet sat up subconsciously. The spring on the island in the center of the lake was much hotter than the spring water outside. He only soaked for a short while before his whole body became hot. Hey, are there any other springs? He wrapped a large towel around his upper body and asked the other side through the mist. Logically speaking, Hot springs should have different temperatures from high to low, so that you can enjoy a comfortable bath. However, as he walked along, he didn't seem to see. "Yes, I have," Miss Silver Dragon answered happily. "Do you want to try the cold spring? I'll take you there." "Sounds good. One cold and one hot, as long as it is not too much and within the range that the cardiovascular system can bear, the feeling is still very interesting." Greet followed Sarara, walked around the spring, stepped on the rocks, and walked forward step by step. He walked to a spring that was bubbling and boiling at any moment. "This seems to be a hot spring." Gretel turned his head, speechless, and squinted at Sarala. Judging from the degree of rolling of the bubbles, it is visually estimated that it is at least 80 degrees, maybe close to 100 degrees. "Madam, are you sure this is a cold spring? Wouldn't it be the Dragon Clan's standard cold spring?" "Of course not," the Silver Dragon girl widened her eyes exaggeratedly. "I said a cold spring is a cold spring. Well, it just needs to be processed." She took a deep breath. Greet suddenly felt something was wrong and took 2 steps back, staying as far away as possible. The next moment, a frosty white breath suddenly came out of the petite girl's mouth. "Gretel!" The cone-shaped breath swept across the spring water. For a moment, the spring water with rolling bubbles stood still for a moment, visible to the naked eye. Then, Miss Silver Dragon jumped down with a splash, water splashed everywhere, and the cold ice fell on Gretel's feet. "Come down. Greet, come down. How should I put it? Being with a silver dragon, especially a young silver dragon, will she always surprise you?" Gretel plopped down straight to the end. The cold spring water reached directly over his head. He shivered in the water, and the pores on his body shrank into goosebumps on the spot. He popped his head up, applied some water on it, and heard Sarala happily showing off to him. "How is it? Are you comfortable? I can control it well. Let me tell you, I practiced 70 or 80 times before I could control the power of my exhalation just right. After soaking in the hot spring, I jumped in and felt the most comfortable." Well, Sarala, you are really great. Soak in the hot springs for a while, then soak in the cold springs for a while, soak in the hot springs for a while, then soak in the cold springs for a while. After 2 rounds of tossing, Sarara lost interest in the spring water in front of her and began to look for other fun. "Gretel, where are the things you prepared? Fruit? Juice? Dessert? You promised to treat me to something. Bring it with you, bring it with you. You can soak for a while first, and eat and drink when it's hot. It's the most comfortable thing." Greet stayed buried in the hot spring for a while, then got up and took out his space bag. He summoned a floating saucer, the same one, and put various kinds of food on it. Gooseberries, cranberries, snakeberries, black currants, wild pears, apples, cranberries. For Miss Long's tooth sacrifice, the barbarians worked hard. They went down to the foot of Long Chow Mountain and picked all kinds of fruits all over the mountains and fields. From apples as big as half a fist to snakeberries as big as the belly of a pinky finger, as long as they taste good, they won't pick anything. The intact ones were directly sealed, while the slightly damaged ones were squeezed into juice, and Greet poured them out in full jugs. Served in a transparent glass, it is colorful and really beautiful. Gretel threw a freeze ray into the cup. In an instant, a thin layer of cold mist formed on the surface of the glass, and fine sand-like frost also condensed inside the juice. Greet smiled and pushed over a cup. "Come on, try it." Miss Yinlong grabbed the glass with a rush, raised her head, and drank it down. The cold breath passed through her mouth, esophagus, and swirled in her stomach. She raised her head to the sky and sighed comfortably. Ah! The strong abdominal muscles contract hard and the diaphragm lifts up, squeezing out the last bit of air. Then, the silver dragon girl stood up and smashed the glass in her hand onto the floating saucer, making a loud thud. I want more. Don't worry, I've prepared a lot. In fact, the barbarians squeezed a full bucket of juice alone. What Gretel needs to worry about is not whether there is enough juice to drink, but whether his arm muscles will be overworked as he moves the barrel again and again. It doesn't matter, powerful mage's hand, here we go. It turned out that he didn't need to worry about this. After the powerful mage's hand was deployed twice, Cyrilla grabbed the barrel and poured half of the barrel for herself in one breath. Under Yinlong's powerful control ability, the juice suspended in the air and turned into a cup shape, with the smoothie inside finally condensing. Cyrilla held the juice cup and ate the fruit on the floating dish. She was so happy. One person killed a floating saucer with a diameter of 3 feet. She pressed the stone steps by the spring and jumped into the air. In mid-air, it has returned to its original form, and a strong wind is sweeping across. As agreed, you will be responsible for these snacks, and I will be responsible for catching the game. Wait. I'll treat you to something good to eat. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There will be another update in 5 minutes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 429. Gretel kicked the water waves with his 2 calves, raised his head, and watched the silver dragon flutter away. He threw himself a loudspeaker, and in the strong wind blowing in his face, he shouted with all his strength. Don't fight with anything too strong. No. The silver dragon's voice became farther and farther away and became smaller and smaller. Greed put his mind into the space bag and began to check the things he brought. A total of 3 grills are prepared, 2 small and 1 large, which can roast a whole lamb. There were a lot of roasting forks prepared, large and small. The largest one still had a fishy smell when it was brought out, maybe it was a whaling gun used by savages. Charcoal, in short, to prepare this heap of charcoal, the savages killed 2 trees. There's not much to say about the seasonings, except for the last bit to keep it all out. I don't know what Sarah will bring back, speaking of which, 1 roasted whole lamb, or at most 2 roasted whole lambs, and he also has information cooking. If there are 8 out of 10 in one go, that won't happen, right? No way. Sarah can only catch 1 sheep with each paw, so she won't have the patience to weave a basket, will she? Greed slid down, soaked in the hot spring again, and poured himself a glass of juice. Well, the mixed juice tastes good, but it's a little sour. It would be better if I added some sugar. Unfortunately, all his sugar was poured into the dessert. Gretel soaked in the hot springs, drank iced juice, ate fruit, and ate desserts when she was hungry. The dessert was designed by him personally. He asked the mountain eagles to bring enough seaweed, boil it, extract agar, add sugar, and freeze it with chopped fruit pieces. Each piece is crystal clear, and the visual effect is very beautiful. I'm just not very hungry. Well, fortunately, the barbarians also made sugar cakes. They were big, thick, and as thick as a palm, almost as big as a face. When I was half full, the sun was almost at its zenith. The sky is clear and cloudless, and the ultraviolet rays on the top of the mountain are particularly strong. Gretel touched his head, took out a towel, and covered his head and face. Based on past experience, skin is particularly susceptible to UV damage if soaked in mineral-rich water for too long. He gets skin allergies every time he goes to the beach. By the way, where did Cyrilla go? If it takes longer, a round trip to the dragon's nest will be enough. He soaked in the water and thought wildly. After an unknown amount of time, the sky above suddenly darkened, and the light shining through the towel was dim. Either the weather has changed, or a large creature is flying by. Greet suddenly sat upright in the water and grabbed the towel. He looked up, his eyes still narrowed subconsciously, and the heavy wind was already whistling down. With a bang, it hit hard not far away, accompanied by Cyrilla's happy shout. "Gretel, I'm back. The smell of sea is tangy." Cyrilla spun around above her head and plunged into the lake, probably to clean herself. Greet stood up resignedly, looked around, and immediately saw the food that Cyrilla had brought back. A fish. A big fish as long as two people. A large fish with a spindle-shaped body, a silver-blue back, and a silver-white belly. It is constantly flapping and looks like two people. Very good, how should I kill it? Physical attacks probably can't do it, so using Dragon Breath Hand to blast him to death doesn't seem like a good idea. Gretel was silent for a moment, then retreated into the hot spring again, only showing his head and looking at the fish. Fortunately, Miss Silver Dragon swam a few laps and returned quickly. With a faint smell of lake water, she stood next to the big fish. With one punch, she beat the big fish upright and collapsed on the ground motionless. Then, the Silver Dragon girl grabbed the fish's gills with one hand and broke it upwards. It clicked, and the gill cover was torn off directly. She formed a hook with 5 fingers, inserted it down along the edge of the gill cover, and then lifted it up. Suddenly, a piece of white fish bone, together with the scales and skin, was handed over to her. "Tear it off. Gretel. Come on, eat this fish's brains." "What? Eat quickly. The brain of this kind of fish is helpful for the growth of spiritual power. I caught it with great difficulty." Gretel was confused for a moment. "Wait, I brought a barbecue grill, a barbecue spit, and charcoal, but I didn't bring a pot. The fish brain thing is more tender than tofu, what should I use to bake it? I can't pick it up with a fork. Is it still a squid brain?" Under Cyrilla's constant urging, he had no choice but to summon another floating saucer, fly to the side of the fish head, and use the mage's hands to take out the fish brains one by one. The crystal clear, jelly-like fish brains were piled on the floating dish. Gretel thought for a while, carefully summoned a small fireball, and moved closer to heat it. "Why are you burning it? Just eat it." Cyrilla stamped her feet on the side. Greet patted his head, took out the microscope, slides, and cover slips, and started working on the spot. "If you didn't tell me, I would have forgotten. Check to see if there are any parasites in the fish's brain. If not, you can eat it raw. Wait until I do a smear to see." Cyrilla was speechless for a moment. She had no choice but to take over the task of controlling the fireball, and at the same time poked her head out to watch Gretel at work curiously. Fish brains can be eaten at any time. At worst, she will catch another one. She has never seen this kind of smear work. Standard smears are performed in triplicate. Cut a small piece, mash it, stir it with physiological saline, apply it on a glass slide, and cover it, change another part, sample again, make it again, change another part and sample again. After finishing 3 copies, Greet sat upright, raised his eyes, and began to adjust the magnification. "Well, let's take a look. This area looks like normal tissue, and this area also, doesn't look like there are eggs, metacercariae, or anything." I change another piece and have a look. It was about his own life, or whether he would be infected with parasites. Greet took the 3 smears seriously and read them one by one. After checking that there were no bugs, he breathed a sigh of relief and raised his head. "It seems there's no problem eating it raw. Come on, let's get started." "What are you doing? It's already cooked." Greet smiled coquettishly, threw a freeze ray on the grilled fish brains, and swallowed it in 2 or 2 mouthfuls. There was no salt, no soy sauce, and even mustard, but he didn't care. He didn't even think of finding out the spices and sprinkling them on it. I didn't know the taste of this meal. I took big mouthfuls and just stuffed the fish brains into my belly. A big fish that is 2 people long has a very large brain. Gretel felt like his stomach was full of food, so he quickly geared up and came over to take on the task of being a chef. Sarala, thank you for your hard work. Come on, tear off the fish skin, and I'll make grilled fish for you. Snort. Sarara brushed it twice and then tore off the fish skin and its fine scales. Greet took out the prepared machete, used his dissection skills, and began to decompose the fish piece by piece. After just cutting off a few pieces, a violent heat suddenly rose from my stomach. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There will be no more at midnight, but there will be more tomorrow at 12 noon and 8 p.m. As for whether there will be a 6th update, it depends on everyone's efforts. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 431. Chapter 430, Greet empty and unrepaired Nordmark, updated to 46. A searing torrent of pain rose from the stomach, and in just a moment, it swept through the entire body. Gretel screamed in pain, hugged his belly, bent down and sat down. What is going on? Why does it suddenly hurt? Poisoned? Stomach perforation? Cholecystitis? Pancreatitis? Or some other situation? Which part hurts? What kind of pain is it? Colic, stabbing pain, tenderness, rebound pain, radiating pain, referred pain. Before he finished thinking, a bunch of professional terms had all flown out of his mind. All over the body, from body to spirit, there is only one feeling left. Pain. Pain, 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 pain. What, situation, ah. Gretel, what's wrong with you? Sarala was at a loss as she walked around him. White light flashed on his hand, and he applied one treatment after another, but the situation did not improve at all. What happened? It was fine just now, why did it suddenly stop working? What happened? That fish brain is edible. There are benefits to eating. I used to eat it when I was little. In her anxiety, her bright silver blue eyes turned into pure silver without realizing it, and the elf's round pupils also turned into vertical pupils. Looking at it with dragon eyes that can detect energy, Gretel's body was rolling with a powerful force that made the outline of his body somewhat blurry. Can't see clearly. Sarara took a step back and instantly transformed back into dragon form. If you look closely, you will see that the force is centered on the stomach, running rampant and scurrying everywhere. And there are already tiny particles on the outside of Greet's skin, on the top of her head, and at the ends of her hair, which are constantly steaming upward. Ah! Sarala stretched out her front paws and covered her mouth. She remembered that this kind of fish is indeed a delicacy, especially the brain of the fish, which is of great benefit to the mental growth of the young dragon, but that is only for the young dragon. Gretel is not a baby dragon. He is only human. Humanity. Moreover, he is a level 5 priest, a level 4 mage, and the warrior level representing physical strength is only about level 1 to 2. If Sarara were a Chinese player, she would probably use one word to describe this incident. The deficiency cannot be replenished. Gretel. Meditate. She yelled. Parents and relatives once mentioned that the humans who traveled with them often used meditation to guide the power inside after eating something that was just a snack or snack to the dragon family. Of course, if you are a strong warrior, you may use martial arts training or fighting to restrain this abundant power from returning to yourself. The dragon's sharp voice penetrated the fog. Gretel was shocked, and instinctively followed the instructions of the silver dragon girl and assumed a meditation posture. Once, twice, 3 times, he tried several times in severe pain before he could calm down and enter a meditative state. His thoughts converge and his mental strength expands. The world in front of me immediately changed. Finally he saw it. It's not poisoning, it's not a perforated stomach, it's not any physical disease, it's just a surge of violent energy that has never been seen before. These energies rush into the meditative environment, roaring, sweeping, and surging. Because it was too strong and too violent, every roll of this energy brought intense pain to the body. But fortunately, after entering the meditative state, he could finally use his mental power to guide, restrain, and filter it, and most importantly, digest it and absorb it. At the edge of the meditation environment, conch-like shells unfold layer by layer. The surging energy was directed and immediately roared in, circling around in the conch. Just like being processed by a centrifuge, this energy quickly begins to separate. The messy, restless, and uncontrolled parts are ejected from the holes in the spiral wall, the pure, gentle, and easily absorbed parts quietly settle down. The storm in the spiritual sea subsided slightly, the pressure eased slightly, and the energy rising from the physical body quickly poured in again, as if it had found a sluice. Cyrilla had no way of seeing these changes. She could only see that after Greet entered meditation, instead of getting better, the situation seemed to get worse. His body was shaking, his breathing was rapid, and his exposed upper body was burned red. He seems very hot, needs to cool down? I'm good at this. Cyrilla opened her mouth and was about to spit out her breath. After thinking for a while, he stopped again and hooked the tip of his claw towards the lake in the distance. There was a loud splash, and the crystal clear water rose into the sky, turning into a rainbow bridge and rushing towards her. Then, under the control of the silver dragon girl, the lake erected a circular water wall around Gretel, even quietly spreading underneath her. At a glance, it looked like his entire body was filled into a huge glass. The water from the lake filled the water glasses. It was flooded from Gretel's feet to his shoulders. The silver dragon girl took a breath, controlled herself, and spit out a small puff of white mist on the water. She curled her lips into a shush mouth shape, then blew out a piece of white mist that was really only as thick as a chopstick and watched it sink into the water. In the water cup, she directed the ice-cold lake water to roll around Greet's body, taking away the heat from his body surface. In Silver Dragon's special field of vision, the evaporating particles on Greet's body finally decreased, and the redness of his skin gradually faded. His expression seemed less painful. Well, I'm great. The water flow was spinning like this, and I didn't even let it sway. The magic control was getting more and more precise. Cyrilla clenched her paws and gave herself a thumbs up. If Greet still had the energy to pay attention to the outside world, he would definitely say to her, "Thank you, no need." At least, the water temperature shouldn't drop so fast all at once. Did you know that when the body is cold, peripheral blood vessels contract violently, which will only cause blood pressure to rise rapidly? Unfortunately, he didn't know. Fortunately, the young and strong body, which has been baptized by the world's will feedback many times, is not afraid of the sudden rise in blood pressure. Even if it suddenly rises from 70/110 mmHg to 120/200 mmHg, the body of a first-level warrior and a fifth-level mage will not burst a cerebral blood vessel in a short period of time. He meditated intently. Absorption, transformation, precipitation. Reabsorb, retransform, and precipitate again. The sun gradually set towards the west, and then gradually sank below the sea level. The twinkling stars replaced the burning fireball and dominated the sky above them. The heat radiating from Gretel's skin has also dropped to a very weak level, and cold water is no longer needed to help cool down. Cyrilla even felt that he seemed to need to keep warm. Damn it, I'm not very good at lighting fires. Throwing fireballs into the water doesn't seem right. Should I move him to the hot spring? Forget it, let's change the water. The silver dragon girl hooked her fingers again. With a crash, the water wall collapsed, and the cold lake water suddenly flowed all over the place. The cold wind on the top of the mountain blew onto Greet without any hindrance. Ah, sneeze. Cyrilla, you want to freeze me to death. Best-selling selections are changed at 2 p.m. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I've already posted the explosive chapter early in the morning. The editor made a mistake. Crying, there will be another chapter in 5 minutes, I will try to code 2 more chapters tonight. I'm asking for monthly tickets, recommendation votes, book reviews, and all kinds of things. Thanks to @MagicalGirlMeow for the 100 starting coins.